What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my final thoughts ahead of the Game Week 5 deadline. So I'm going to cover off some questions and topics that you put to me on Twitter. Just before we jump into that, I wanted to talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is Fantasy Football Scout, who can help you be better at FPL. This is a website that I've been using for about 10 years now. If you want to sign up to become a premium member to make use of all the tools, there's a link in the description below. You've got stats tables, you've got comparison tools, fixture tickers, transfer planners, and loads of other stuff in there. I'm actually going to use the fixture ticker in this video when we talk about the wildcard later on. So I'd highly recommend checking it out. Link in the description below. Get signed up today. Lots of time left this season to make use of all those great tools. So I know I only did the team selection video yesterday, but I wanted to give you my current thoughts. I've still got 2 free transfers. I haven't made a move yet. I'm still in the position where I don't really want to change any of my first 11, so I'm looking at either burning a transfer or more likely removing one of my bench players. I've kind of ruled out doing Ward to Everson. That would free up 0.1 million, but even though it's unlikely that Edison or Sanchez or Pope, whoever I move to possibly later on, misses out, injuries can happen, and as bad as Ward is, I might as well keep that playing goalkeeper on the bench. I know some people are speculating that Everson might become the first choice at some point, but I don't expect that to happen too quickly, and even if it does, I can always switch goalkeepers on wildcard, so I'm not really concerned about that. And obviously Andreas Pereira is staying too, so the 2 options are get rid of Greenwood because he might drop in price at some point, and I don't really want to lose value on that position. I was hoping that Taylor at Nottingham Forest would come down to 4.4, but that hasn't happened yet. It might happen over the next few days, but obviously I can't wait, so I'll probably just go to whichever 4.5 million forward is the least owned, that is the least likely to be sold, and just leave it at that. The other option is to get rid of Reed. I could go down to a 4.4 million midfielder. Unfortunately, none of them, from what I can see, are starters. There's players like Longstaff at Newcastle, for example, that do get minutes, but they don't really start that often. But given that Reed is at maximum a 2-pointer, really, he's very unlikely to get you an assist or a goal. I think maybe saving that 0.1 million could be worth it. So they're really the 2 options. Either get rid of Greenwood to save some money or make sure he doesn't drop in price, or I do Reed to a 4.4 and just save the 0.1 million there. So it's much of a muchness. This move that I spoke about yesterday, I'm still not completely against it, but I really don't want to sell Cancelo before Nottingham Forest at home. It just feels like a disaster waiting to happen. I think the only way I do this, because one of the reasons to do it was to have Dunk to cover Gabriel in game week 6 when he plays Man United away, but also to target Leeds fixtures for Everton, and obviously the Nottingham Forest game in game week 7, I think it is. Then in game week 6 it's Brentford. My only worry is that Marsha said that Bamford's back soon. When he is fit and available, I'm almost certain he'll be their first choice number 9. So Rodrigo could play as the 10 for sure, and Aronson goes wide, but I don't know if that's guaranteed, especially when Sinisterra is back. For what it's worth, for anyone that's looking at Rodrigo, I wouldn't be worried about him. I do think he's still a good transfer in, but he is a short-term move. It's just getting rid of Cancelo. The only way I think now that I do these 2 moves is if one of my first 11 is missing for whatever reason. So if we get some early team news that someone's going to be benched or they're going to miss a game, rather than transfer them out, I would probably use Dunk on the bench instead and have him play. It depends what it is, right? Obviously, if someone's ruled out for weeks and weeks, then I would look to transfer them out. But if it's maybe missing for 1 game or they're just being rotated, then I'd probably just get Dunk in and play him instead. Ahead of Andreas Pereira, I'm still not completely sure about that because I don't know what Brighton's chances of getting a clean sheet this week are, but I probably would play him ahead of Andreas Pereira. So that's my kind of current thoughts. For what it's worth, I don't know if any players are going to miss out. I'm just hoping that we get some news before the deadline. But as it stands, my move is probably going to be Greenwood or Reed out, roll the other transfer, and just see if there's something more interesting to do next week. So a lot of people ask me about midfielders around the £6 million price point. Like, do you go for Rodrigo or Gross? Who's the best option? What to do with Leon Bailey? So I thought I would cover them all. I've put this list roughly in order of who I think are the best options out of these players. There is a bit of context around that, so I'll definitely talk about that as we go. If you're a Leon Bailey owner, it's the same situation as the last couple of weeks. You either put him down to like a 4.5 or a 4.4 million midfielder and just bench them every week. I wouldn't pay the extra for De Silva for what it's worth. I said that a few weeks ago as well. Or you find some money to upgrade him. There's no good midfielders around 5 million, or at least no one that I'd want to play week in, week out. You either find the money for one of these players on the list, or even, you know, more expensive if you can, or you just downgrade him. That is it. Where you find the money from, I'll leave that up to you. In terms of the best options, I still think Martinelli is at the top. I know we're coming into a period of fixture congestion. Maybe Nketiah or Smith Rowe might start, but he's doing so well, and so are Arsenal in general. I don't think Arteta's going to mess with that. And I know European matches and stuff like that is coming up as well, and the schedule is quite brutal. But I think possibly for teams like Arsenal and Man United who are in the Europa League, they might not rotate so much in the league. They might actually play more of their second choice players in Europe, hope they can still win those games, and maybe in the latter stages start to play stronger squads. I think we might see it a little bit different in the Champions League, where Man City, Liverpool, Spurs, etc., they play stronger squads in the Champions League and maybe rotate a little bit in the Premier League. We're not going to know until it happens, but I don't think Martinelli is a bad option whatsoever to bring in. I think the fixtures still look pretty good for at least the next 4 game weeks, bearing in mind people are going to start looking at wildcards soon. So Arsenal have got Villa at home, Man United away, Everton at home, Brentford away. Still pretty good, 6.4 million. He's cheaper than Rodrigo. He is the one I would get in if you don't already own him and you've got a free Arsenal slot. Then it's between Rodrigo and Gross. Now, interestingly, I think the fixtures in the short term are both pretty good for Brighton and Leeds. I actually think from an attacking perspective, they're maybe slightly better for Leeds. So I actually prefer Rodrigo to Gross. Now, obviously, there's the price to take into account. 0.7 million could give you a nice little upgrade elsewhere. I also think Gross might be a slightly better long-term option in terms of minutes. So if I look at Brighton's fixtures, for example, they've got Fulham away, Leicester at home, Bournemouth away, then Crystal Palace at home. So 4 okay fixtures, 4 pretty good fixtures, I would say. Then it's Liverpool away and Spurs at home. So it's not like their fixtures are amazing for a long period of time. But after that, it's Brentford away and Nottingham Forest at home. So if you were looking to maybe wait until game weeks 11 or 12 to wildcard, maybe Gross is the slightly better pickup just for longer term minutes. Because I think at this point, he's played quite a few 90 minutes. Potter in the past has rotated quite a bit. But the way Gross is playing, the amount of minutes and starts he's had recently, not just this season, but the back end of last season, I think he looks pretty good to be playing regularly. So I do like him as an option. But if you're looking shorter term, especially for those of you that might wildcard in game weeks 8 or 9, Rodrigo is the pick for me. I know with some Leeds fans, I've seen it on Twitter, there's some concerns that long term he won't be nailed. And some people think that, you know, he's in form, he's never going to get dropped. But when everybody is fit, Bamford's going to be, we assume, the first choice number 9. Aronson's their number 10, and then you've got Sinisterra and Harrison on the wings. Now, we could see Rodrigo continue to be played as maybe a second striker, number 10 type player, with Aronson moving wide, but that means one of their wide players misses out, and Aronson has been signed as a number 10. We assume anyway, right? That's his best position, and he is one of Marsch's signings. So Rodrigo could be a long-term issue, but we're not really thinking too long-term right now. And over the next 3 fixtures, Everton at home, Brentford away, and Nottingham Forest at home, if he gets 3 starts, they are 3 good fixtures that I wouldn't mind targeting. And while Bamford's out, Rodrigo's probably on penalties as well. And Marsch has said that Bamford could be back for Everton, like it's close, but that could just be back in the squad. And then the next game, Brentford away, is at the weekend. So is Bamford going to start both those games? I highly doubt it. The bigger issue is maybe Nottingham Forest at home, but I think he's a good enough pick that it's worth taking that risk because the fixture is so good. The only thing I would say with Rodrigo, make sure you've got an exit plan after game week 7. What are you going to do with him in game week 8 if it looks like he's starting to lose minutes, or just because the fixtures get a little bit worse? So you could go to like Zaha, possibly. You could even switch to Gross if you really wanted to. I'm looking at maybe if I brought in Rodrigo, going to Mitrovic up front instead for a similar price, who has really good fixtures from game week 8 onwards. Just think about that kind of stuff. But ultimately, I think I prefer Rodrigo to Gross if you've got the money to buy both, but Martinelli's still ahead. I kind of like Aronson over Harrison. If you look at the stats there, expected goal involvement right now for Harrison is a little bit better, but I like the fact that Aronson seems to have more goal threat. So I think for the 0.6 million saving, I would probably go for Aronson, but I don't think there's too much between them. And I've just put Rashford on because people will be considering him. Antony is signed now, and I think, look, huge money. It doesn't necessarily mean that players are going to play week in, week out. Look at Grealish, look at Lukaku. But this is a player that Ten Hag really wanted. I see him getting a lot of starts at right wing. I don't think many people would disagree with that. That then means that Sancho has to move somewhere else. And essentially, if they sign a new number 9, which looks unlikely, but let's say it happens, or Martial is fit, they will be playing at number 9. Then all of a sudden you've got Elanga, Rashford and Sancho all vying for that left wing spot. And it might be that Antony misses some games and one of them plays on the right and that frees up a spot on the left. But I just worry a little bit about Rashford's minutes. And also with Man United, I said this last week on the preview, the fixtures never get like really great. So Leicester away is okay, but then it's Arsenal at home. Then Crystal Palace is okay. Then it's Leeds at home, which is good. Then it's Man City away. So in the next 5 game weeks, Arsenal at home, Man City away, not great. Leicester away is okay. Crystal Palace away, I think Man United might struggle there. And Leeds at home is good. I just don't think it's worth buying Rashford. I think I would pretty much rather have any of the other players on the list right now. I just think his minutes could come down. Martial is injured, so Rashford might play as the number 9, but he wasn't great there against Southampton. I think Ten Hag might switch that up. So I'd be a little bit worried about Rashford's minutes in terms of buying him. Although if I had him, I would definitely give him the Leicester game. So somebody wanted me to run through the underlying numbers for the premium attackers just to see how they're looking. And to be honest, I don't think it's anything we weren't expecting apart from maybe Son. So I'll come on to that in a minute. I've added Sterling to the list mostly because I needed a 6th player for the graphic. But also his underlying numbers are proper decent. Okay, so you look at that non-penalty XG and his expected assists. They're very similar to Salah. We've seen numbers similar to this from him before at Man City. We know he's someone that can get plenty of attacking returns when he gets the minutes, which he's going to get at Chelsea as well. So I think, look, I wouldn't go out of my way to change my structure to accommodate a 9.9 million midfielder. But if you're someone that is maybe getting, I don't know, sick of like Robertson or Cancelo, and you want to go down to like a 4.5 or a 5, and you want to change your £8 million midfielder up to Sterling, I don't think that's a bad shout to go against the template. I don't think you can be punished too much by that move. And I do think over the next few weeks, Sterling is a nice option. For what it's worth, I'm not really looking at getting him. He just doesn't fit in with how my squad is set up. But for 9.9, he could get you plenty of returns because Chelsea's fixtures are decent, his underlying numbers are good, and obviously he's a lot cheaper than everyone else on this list. Son worries me. Because his expected goal threat is down from last year. All the usual context and caveats. This is very small sample sizes. The biggest thing for me is not necessarily just that goal threat is down. His minutes are now at risk. And I don't mean that he's going to start being on the bench every single game. But I do think he's more likely to be subbed because of Richarlison. And Conte has spoken about how, essentially he said that Richarlison probably deserves a start at this point because of how well he's playing. Now that doesn't mean it'll be in the league. It could be in the Champions League instead. But that is worth kind of thinking about with Son. So I think you've probably got to get rid of Son. I don't like saying that because at Fulham at home in game week 6 looks pretty good. But while everyone else has got like Kane and Salah and Haaland and they're getting points left, right and centre, Son's just not doing anything. And I think with the minutes risk now, and again, he will probably start the majority of games, but he'll be coming off early. I just don't think you can justify 11.8. So I would be looking to get rid of him. It doesn't have to be this week or next week, but at some point soon, have a plan. And if it's this week, so be it. I just think that has to happen at this point. Elsewhere, again, like I said, it's pretty much as expected. The reason I don't think it's worth paying for De Bruyne is his goal threat is just not good enough compared to the other players. I held that opinion in game week 1. That hasn't really changed now. 0.15 expected goals per 90 is just really low. And you can throw things back at me like he's a great finisher. He can score from outside the box. He is not going to score as regularly as Salah, Haaland and Harry Kane. And for that reason, I don't think it's worth paying 12.2 million. Like Haaland and Kane are both cheaper. They're both likely to score you more goals. They're on penalties as well. None of those things apply to De Bruyne. So it's just one of those situations where he's a great player, right? We all can accept that. And he is a good FPL asset. He's just not as good as the other premiums, in my opinion. And again, that hasn't changed. If I had De Bruyne and I had a way to switch to Haaland, I would probably be doing that. I know his minutes are better, but I don't think that's going to kind of counter how good Haaland is. And you look at his expected goal numbers, 1.04. That is already higher than what he had at Dortmund, probably because of the Man City effect. Obviously, again, small sample size, those numbers might come down a bit, but that is still impressive and still very scary if you don't own him. So I think Salah and Haaland are still the two to own. I've got no interest in selling Salah whatsoever. As I said yesterday, his underlying numbers are pretty much the same as last year. The goals and the assists are coming. If I had Kane, I wouldn't necessarily panic. I'm going to talk more about Kane to Haaland switch later. He is also looking really good. Again, very similar numbers to last year. He's on penalties. I know he's missed. That won't happen very often. He is definitely a better option than Son. So for me, if we're talking purely premiums, Salah and Haaland are probably the best, then Kane. De Bruyne and Son, I just don't think are worth paying for right now. You don't necessarily need to panic if you've got them, but I would be looking to ship them sometime, sooner rather than later. And then if you want to go for a punt, I like Sterling. 9.9 million. Might not be a bargain, but he's got good numbers. He will get returns, and they got good fixtures. So following on from that, there was some questions about Kane to Haaland. So do Kane owners just give in and switch to Haaland, or should we continue to stick and hope Pep rotates Haaland enough over the next few weeks? So I do think it's worth saying Haaland will probably miss at least one of the next 3 Premier League games, I would assume, just because of the fixture pile-up. It is worth noting, as I said on Team Selection yesterday, they do look to be trying to manage him. So when they can bring him off, they are. He's not playing 90 minutes week in, week out. We've already seen him get subbed at, I think, 73 minutes, 86 or something like that, and then 77. So he is being brought off as soon as they can, once the match is won and all that stuff. Even when he was on a hat-trick, Pep Guardiola still brought him off. In his first game, he could have gone and got a hat-trick, and Pep was like, no, need to manage him, need to rest him, he's coming off. So that is worth noting, and that might mean that he starts more often than not. I think, if you think that Haaland's going to start against Forest, and right now I think it is fairly likely, I'm not 100% sure, I think you can make a case to make the switch. The only thing is, Kane has Fulham at home in game week 6, and that is a good fixture, and we know he's probably going to start. It's worth saying again, there's nothing to say that Kane won't have reduced minutes over the fixture congestion as well. Conte has already spoken about the fact that he might have to manage him too. I think it's way less likely than Haaland. Like, Kane is, when he's not injured, I know he's had like ankle issues and stuff like that in the past. When he's kind of fit and playing, he's a bit of a machine, right? He does start pretty much week in, week out, gets to 80, 90 minutes. So I don't expect him to suddenly start missing loads of games, but he might have his minutes managed as well. So it's really tricky. I think if you're happy to captain Salah this week, I would maybe just give Kane the West Ham away game, hope that Haaland has his minutes reduced enough to not do much, and then Fulham at home in game week 6 looks pretty good for Kane. But as a long-term plan, I think I do prefer Haaland. I think what he's going to do in that Man City team, similar to what Aguero's done in the past, is kind of scary. I think he is going to get more chances than Kane. I don't even want to get down the route of who's the better player. I just think in that Man City team, it's impossible not to score loads of goals. And as long as Mahrez isn't on the pitch, and even if he is, I still think Haaland will have penalties. Kane doesn't even have that as an advantage either. So if you're asking me, if I was wildcarding right now, who would I have? It would definitely be Haaland. Do I think that Kane to Haaland's a bad move? Absolutely not. If you want to do it for Nottingham Forest at home, I think it's okay. I just think for the next 2 weeks, if you're not sure, maybe just give Kane a couple more games, let him have that Fulham at home game, and then look to switch to Haaland. But long term, I think Haaland is definitely the one. So a few questions about Saka. Even though it's Villa at home, is it time to move Saka on? It may well be. I think Saka owners are in the same position as Mason Mount owners, where the numbers are down from last year, but there's always another good fixture to come. So I don't think you have to go out of your way to sell him for Villa at home. If you've got the money to maybe go to Diaz instead, that could be a nice move, but I don't think it's an essential move this week. The other thing to think about is, do you have anything else to do in your team? If there's more important transfers, I think you can definitely make them before you sell Saka versus Villa at home, who have been really poor this season. Like I said, his expected goal involvement numbers are down from last year, and that does worry me because it hasn't necessarily affected other players in that team like Martinelli and Jesus. So possibly Saka is a bit more withdrawn, but then I watched that Fulham game and he did come quite close to scoring. And if he'd scored in that game, would we even be talking about this now? I don't know. So if you've got other things to do in your team, prioritise them first. If there's nothing else to do, and especially if you're looking to downgrade to like a Martinelli or a Rodrigo, and you can use that money to make a big upgrade elsewhere, I would consider moving him on. So again, I don't want to try and sit on the fence, but Villa at home is a good fixture. If you have to keep him one more week, that is not a big issue. But at this point, him and Mount have probably had enough time, and if you can move them on, that's a good move too. Let's talk about wildcards. When are you thinking of using the wildcard before the World Cup? I can't really see any obvious fixture swings like we've had in previous seasons. Now, right now, I still don't know. I'm happy to leave my options open. I think a lot of people really worry about when they're going to use it. If you're not sure, just wait a few more weeks and see if anything changes. If I had to say right now, it would probably be game week 9 because you've got the international break between game weeks 8 or 9 and there are some fixture swings there. But I'm open to leaving it a little bit longer, maybe game week 10, 11 or 12. And a lot of it is going to come down to how and when you want to get rid of some of the key players that have been in our squad since game week 1. I'm talking Arsenal, Liverpool, maybe even Man City players as well. But as said in the question, there aren't necessarily super obvious fixture swings. And when they do happen, they're not necessarily for teams that we want to target anyway, like Newcastle, Fulham, Leicester. We might want 1 or 2 players from those teams. We're not going to suddenly want to get rid of triple Liverpool, triple Arsenal to triple up on Newcastle, right? So one of the tools that you can use for this, so this is from Fantasy Football Scout. I talked about them at the start of the video. If you want to sign up to become a premium member, link in the description below. One of my favorite tools is the fixture ticker tool. So let's go and look at game week 9. So one of the things we can do is start the game week a little bit later. So we don't have to just look from now. We can move it to game week 9 and we'll just do it till game week 16 because that's when the World Cup is on, right? So we're only looking at kind of this little fixture swing. So if we order it by difficulty, it'll then put the best fixtures at the top. So you can see Chelsea still have pretty good fixtures. Liverpool have Brighton away in game week 9, then Arsenal away game week 10, then Man City at home game week 11. That might not be ideal, but in one situation, or one way of playing, you could get rid of your Liverpool players, some of them, not all of them necessarily. Like you probably wouldn't want to sell Trent, I don't think. He's just still such good value. You could transfer them out and then maybe look to wildcard in game week 12 to get them all back in and just basically arrange your team so that it's extremely good for 12, 13, 14, 15 and 16. 5 game weeks, you absolutely nail it and then it's unlimited transfers. And then you look at kind of, who was the other one? Spurs, Arsenal as well. So in game week 9, they have Spurs at home, Liverpool at home, then Leeds away, then Man City at home. So chances are you're not going to want 3 Arsenal players for that. The problem is, if you then target all the teams with good fixtures, Bournemouth, I mean, maybe Solanke. They've sacked Scott Parker. Maybe they'll be a more attacking team right now. I highly doubt it, but you never know. Possibly Leicester. I think Maddison instead of Diaz, for example, could be nice. Forest at home, Bournemouth away, Crystal Palace at home, Leeds at home. So you could look to bring him in. But again, that's a move you could possibly make with a free transfer. Aston Villa, I don't know if I'm going to go with many players from them. Maybe a striker, maybe a defender if I'm feeling like I want a world of pain. I want to put Luca Dean back into my side. But hopefully you get the point, right? There are fixture swings for the big teams like Man City, to a certain extent, Arsenal and Liverpool. But are you going to want to swap all of them out for Bournemouth, Leicester and Aston Villa players? Probably not. So to come back to the question, and by the way, if you want to sign up and use all the tools, link in the description below for Fantasy Football Scout. To come back to the question, there are fixture swings, but they're not necessarily as good as we think they will be. And because of that, there isn't necessarily a best time to wildcard. It might just come down to your own preferences, when you get a few injuries, or when you just want to mix things up. So like I said, right now, I could see me going for it in game week 9, but it's not necessarily that easy because you won't really want to get rid of all your Liverpool or your Arsenal players. So yeah, no obvious fixture swings, no obvious time in my opinion to wildcard. Game week 9 could be good. I'm going to continue to leave my options open. Goalkeepers, very interesting. What are your general thoughts about goalkeeper transfers? With so little to do, I'm considering Ramsdale to Sanchez. Is it a good opportunity to save funds and go for better fixtures? So one thing I would say, I don't think Ramsdale to Sanchez is a good move this week. Ramsdale has Villa at home. Sanchez has Fulham away. I think for that week, I would just keep Ramsdale, right? Arsenal defence is very good. Yes, Brighton defence is good too, and you save some money, but I wouldn't go out of my way to get rid of Ramsdale this week. General thoughts on goalkeeper transfers in the past have always been, just don't make them. It's not worth it. And the main reason for that is the ceiling for goalkeepers is not necessarily that high. I know sometimes they'll get bonus points and save points and they will go and get that double figure haul. But usually you get kind of 4 to 6 points as a maximum from a goalkeeper. So switching them around has never really been worth it in the past, which is why you'll hear a lot of content creators just say never use a transfer on a goalkeeper, only ever do it when you're wildcarding or free hitting or something like that. But I've already done a goalkeeper transfer myself and I might make another one. That is just the season we're in right now. Some of it's to do with prices, etc. But a lot of it is to do with the fixtures. We don't have any reason to get rid of our Arsenal players, our Man City players, our Liverpool players, not even really our Chelsea and to some extent Spurs players either. So because of that, people have extra transfers lying around. So they're looking to do goalkeeper moves. And that's perfectly fine. I wouldn't I don't know, let's say someone, extreme example, someone gets injured, like you've got Saka, he gets injured, you wouldn't not transfer him out and do a goalkeeper move instead, but when there's nothing else to do, you can happily make that move. I just don't think that Ramsdale to Sanchez is necessarily a good move this week, unless you desperately need the money for another move. So to follow on from that, we've got another goalkeeper question. Yes, this is FPL 22-23, where we're talking about goalkeepers all the time. Is Brighton Sanchez the main go-to goalkeeper when freeing up cash for other moves? If you're downgrading from a 5.5 or a £5 million goalkeeper, is there anyone else you would look at? Simple answer is no. I think in and around that 4.5 million price, he is the best option. The only other two that I see people talking about are Raya and Henderson. With Raya, I just think he's very similar to Sanchez in terms of his potential, but Sanchez is in a better defence, so I would just go for him. With Henderson, I know people will look at kind of save points, bonus points, and he's very good at saving penalties as well. So when they do get one against them, there is a chance of a big haul. But ultimately, I think Nottingham Forest are going to concede so many goals this season that it's not worth going for him over someone like Sanchez. So for me, he is the best option. Again, whether or not you need to downgrade to him this week will depend on whether you need the money. If you've got Edison, he's a better option this week. If you've got Ramsdale, I think he's a better option. Myself, I probably will downgrade Edison at some point. I don't know if it'll be this week or next week or maybe the week after in game week 7. It probably will be to Sanchez, but the longer I leave it, the worse the fixtures are going to get. And I may look at Pope. If I don't go for Trippier, Nick Pope is the Newcastle goalkeeper. Could be an option. From game week 6, their fixtures are pretty good. But ultimately, if you want someone around 4.5, Sanchez is probably the go-to. So this is a different type of question. It's literally about being different and maybe having a bit of fun as well. When is the time to introduce differentials to break the template? Not just to try and rise up the rankings with everyone having similar 11s, but also to reintroduce that element of fun. Burning transfer scenes a bizarre new part of FPL this year, right? And I kind of get it. I think there's a couple of reasons why FPL is playing out as it is right now. One is the prices. I've talked about that a lot. We don't need to get into it again. But a lot of players from the top teams were just too cheap. Even by like 0.5 or a million, it could have changed how the template looks right now. But the fixtures are also a big part. There's nothing FPL can do about that. So my entire 11 is Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool and Arsenal because they've got really good fixtures. Had they had bad fixtures, I'm sure I'd have players from different teams in my 11. So there's not much we can do about that. As I discussed with the wild card, that will change soon when the fixtures start to turn. I've looked at whether I use 2 free transfers this week or just 1. I've looked at my transfer plans after this week, and I don't really know what I'm going to do. I'm a little bit unsure. So things will change soon. I'm sure other people are thinking about that as well. There's always a template too. For the 10 years I've played FPL, maybe 11 years now, there's always been a template and people are always complaining about it every year. That is not new. That is never going to change. So we need to get over that as well. In terms of being different, I don't think being different for the sake of it is the best way to get the maximum amount of FPL points. So when you talk about reintroducing that element of fun, that depends what's fun for you. For me, I run a YouTube channel where I've got to come and explain my team every single week. So I will only pick the players that I think are going to score me the most points. And if I have to make what's considered boring and safe picks, that's what I will do. When I see a chance for a differential, I will go for it. And look, 99.9% of the comments are great. The community on this channel is brilliant. I absolutely love everyone that watches and interacts. But I know what will happen if I go for a season where I have a really bad rank. I will get loads of comments. Why are you making YouTube videos? How do you get paid to do this? And all that stuff. So it's not necessarily for me about playing safe. It's about trying to maximize the points. And right now, that is picking all the players from the top 5 teams because they've got good fixture runs. Again, that will change soon. So you need to decide what's fun for you. If you don't care about your rank, you've got no one to go and show it to, go a bit different. If it doesn't pay off, who cares? You can go again in a couple of weeks time or even next season, right? It just doesn't matter. But I don't think that's the best way to get the most amount of points. And also, I've seen in the past a lot of times people get bored of the template, so they take out players that they really shouldn't be doing. They get in a differential just for the sake of it. They then get less points. They go down the ranks. They get the red arrows, and then they talk about quitting FPL. So you need to see, or you need to decide, 1, what fun means to you, and 2, how you're going to react if you start doing badly. And I think about the differentials. Look, Sterling is really nice at 9.9, but he's expensive. Would Vardy fit in our teams when the fixtures turn? Possibly, but if it means having to sell Jesus or Haaland, like, why would you do that right now? They just look too good. The fixtures are too good. So it's even, look, I'm not the most risky or differential type of manager either way, right? There's other people making content that will do that, but even I am struggling completely to see where these differentials are. I look at cheap midfield midfielders, it just seems obvious to go Martinelli or Rodrigo or Gross right now. I don't even necessarily like Rashford. I'm a Man United fan as well. You look at the defenders, the prices are so cheap. Why would you not have James and Trent and Cancelo to a certain extent? Maybe even downgrade him to Gabriel, Trippier, Zinchenko if he's fit. They just all seem like such obvious picks right now. I just don't think you can go too different without severely affecting your rank. I think you need to just play out this boring phase of FPL, maybe actually enjoy it. The last 2 seasons have been very chaotic with COVID and stuff like that. Things will change. Fixture congestion, rotation, that will mean differences with our team. People will start breaking away from the current template. We just got to give it a few more weeks, I think. There we go. If you found that useful and enjoyed it, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you're new around here as well. I know there's a lot to take in ahead of the deadline, but I will make sure to have the chapters in there just in case there's certain sections that you want to watch. And also, if you haven't checked out Fantasy Football Scout and you want to sign up to become a premium member, which I would recommend, there is a link in the description below. Otherwise, I'll leave it there. I'll go and get this edited, uploaded, and hopefully you enjoy it ahead of the deadline. And I'll see you for the deadline stream around 4 o'clock today.